will talk about last two lectures, I just want to mention that often people misuse their responsibility. I identified four areas, four types of misuse. The first type is you relinquish your responsibility. You surrender your freedom and responsibility to authority and to pastor, to parents. You surrender your responsibility. Let them decide your fate for you. The second type of view is that you abuse responsibility. You know, you don't hold yourself accountable for the freedom you have been given. You just abuse it. Oh, you know, you just do a sloppy job. You know, nobody find out. That's abuse. And the third mistake is that you overstep your area of responsibility. It's overstepping into other people's territory. Again, create problem. And the last type would be the worst type, is depriving others of their responsibility. The Chinese parents do it all the time. You know, Chinese parents want to arrange everything for children, so deprive them of learning how to be responsible. Or dictatorship, you know, in any country, the government deprives you of your responsibility. An authentic person, okay. A mandate of a spiritual call, how should we live? What do I ought to do with my life? I think it's Aristotle said, there are two important questions everybody must ask. The first question is how I ought to live. The second question is that how can I be happy? American turns around. The first question they ask is how can I be happy? And they don't care too much about how we ought to live. So these two are very different questions. How should we live? How we ought to live responsibly, virtually? How do we lead an exemplar life? And how do we fulfill our mission in life? See, how we ought to live is very different kind of question than how can I be happy? Right? So if you keep asking how can I be happy, you'll be miserable. But you miss your calling, you can try everything. You're still not being happy. You're still being unhappy. The last point is that an authentic person must take a stand and make a choice in spite of fear and anxiety. So it's a scary thing to have freedom because you're so afraid of making mistakes, right? On Sunday, the young girl said, I'm so afraid of failure. I'm so afraid of change. Everybody is afraid sometimes. So the key is that you take a stand and do what's right. Sooner or later, you have to take a stand. And sometimes you take a stand against the whole church, against the whole school, against authority. And the people who make the most impact on society are those who dare to take a stand. And Martin Luther said, here I stand, so help me God. Remember? Mm-hmm. He changed the whole Catholic establishment. He said, here I stand. Even though he knew that he might be killed, but he take a stand. So that's the key. You know, sooner or later, if you do not dare to take a stand, you never amount to anything. Okay? Now here are all the areas of ability. You know, whether you're a follower, you're a leader, in work, in attitude, you know, the responsibility is a big issue. See, for logotherapy, the main emphasis is not happiness, but responsibility. You live responsibly in all areas of your life. Not as a burden, an obligation. I should do this. But as an inner mandate, they come from the heart. Right? They come from within. It's a privilege. It's a passion or compassion to do something for other people and for God. So it's very different from about Jesus said, come to me, my yoke is what? Light. what I said? Come to me. My yoke is light. Do not take it all as burden. Oh, it's a heavy burden. Come and rest, because my yoke is light. So if you really have love and compassion within you, the burden will be light. Now, will to meaning, this is a lot here, but let me simple. Freud emphasized the will to pleasure, right? The desire for sex and for pleasurable activity. And Adler talked about the will to power of achievement. In other words, every one of us is striving towards superiority, want to be better than other people. Success, right? First will say about those drives are fine, but what makes us human is the will to meaning. In other words, trying to make life meaningful. The will to meaning is both a drive that compels us and also a future attraction. You're full of a dream, right? You both a future attraction and a drive. So it takes a great difference about what is our primary objective. Going back to my earlier contrast. For American friends, their primary objective is happiness and success. Right? That's the primary objective. You do something meaningful in order to be happy and successful. But for Frankel, the primary objective is to live a meaningful life. So they're very different. Right? What your primary objective is meaning and virtue. Okay? Now King Solomon, his book, if you read his book on Ecclesiastes, he lists all the human achievement because he's king, right? He has everything his heart desired. He indulged himself in all his wants and fantasies and everything wants he has. But at the end he said, all is empty if you do not have higher purpose. So you can have everything, you can gain the whole world, still lose your soul. So therefore, we are trying to develop a meaning mindset, okay? A different life orientation. Is that how can I live a meaningful life? What is a meaningful thing to do in this situation, rather than how can I be happy? So it have very different implications. Okay. So will to meaning, and then if you have a will to meaning, there's always meaning in life, regardless of circumstances. You can have meaning, you can discover meaning up to your last minute in your life. Regardless of the situation, you can always find some meaning. Now, here is important differentiation. There's situational meaning, there's ultimate meaning. Situational meaning means that what can I do in that situation? In my work, in my relationship, or in any particular setting. What is a responsible thing to do? See, the situational meaning. Ultimate meaning is asking a different question now. Ultimate meaning is that what does life demand of me? What does God demand of me? You can never know for sure the ultimate meaning. You can never prove it. What you need to do is to have the inner spiritual core in touch with the ultimate demand. Right? You see, we all have a spiritual core. Your spiritual core must be aligned with the ultimate demand of your life. So when there's connection there, and you're more likely to know God's will. Furthermore, you don't discover the ultimate meaning by just reflection or meditation. You also need to be actively engaged in the world, actively engaged in relationship, like come to meet up, going to expose yourself to different challenges, You have to expose yourself to all kinds of situations in order to discover your calling. Right? You don't discover your calling by sitting in your room. You never know what's lurking around the corner. You never know which door will open. You never know. You might knock 1,000 times, but all you need is what? One open door, right? All you need one open door. All you need one right man to marry, or one right woman, right? You can have rejection, it doesn't matter. All you want. You have to, actually seeking, knocking, trying, and put yourself, take a risk. That's how you discover. Right? Nobody hand over to you, say, this is your will. Nobody can tell that to you. You have to discover yourself. Yeah. Oh, that's enough.
No, no.
So,
No, it's not enough.
huh?
Going.
Oh, come.
Over here, look.
Oh, sorry. She would not let me stop. Okay, thank you. Okay.
Just because you turned it off doesn't mean it's over. I can turn it back on.
Okay. Okay, thank you. May I do something?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, this is actually, thank you, this is actually very important, okay? This is a little triangle, okay? There are three ways to find meaning, okay? One is the creative. You do something with your talent, with your hand, with your head. You do something, okay? You do something to contribute to society. The second one is experiential. Learn to savor and appreciate what you experience moment to moment, day to day. You savor the friends around you. You savor the happiness you have right now, right? Right? Do you sense happiness now? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Sure. You savor the moment, right? Maybe tomorrow, maybe not as good. It doesn't matter. You savor what you have now. You enjoy the person next to you, right? And you put it next to you. You enjoy what you have. Experiential, right? Experiential. And the third one is the typical one. The third one is attitudinal. That means if you only experience pain, you can't walk with your hand, you are sick. Or you're locked up in Nazi concentration camp or in prison. If everything deprived, everything taken away from you, if everything taken away from you, you still have the freedom of attitude, right? This is where you can still have choosing a courageous attitude, say, I am not going to be destroyed or defeated. I choose to endure suffering like a man or woman. Okay? I choose to endure in a heroic, courageous way rather than be reduced to the level of an animal. Okay? Then how poor you are, you can still maintain dignity. You have money, you have money. So what? Even you're poor, you still can have dignity. It's not easy, okay? I know what it's like without money. My parents used to be very rich, but then they got bankrupt, right? Other people look down on us, oh, they're bankrupt and no money. So we know what it's like to be poor and what it's like to be rich. But regardless, you have to have some dignity that you are a chosen one, and you are special. That poverty does not make you nobody. Okay, don't let anyone despise you, and don't you dare to despise yourself. Okay, you have no job, don't despise yourself. somebody